Joining the motorway or driving at speed causes many people to feel nervous, but they're one of the safer places to drive, especially when you know what to look out for. So in this video, I'm going to give you some tips to help you feel comfortable and keep you safe when you're on the motorway. Firstly, joining the motorway. I'm going left, first exit at this roundabout, and that will take me to a 70 mile per hour road. It's not technically a motorway, this one, but it is 70 miles an hour and dual carriageway. Where many people go wrong here is they go slowly, which means the speed difference between them and the cars on the main road is great, and therefore it's dangerous. I try to match the speed of the cars in front of me and aim for a gap behind a car. I've got a gap behind this white car, then I start to check my interior mirror and my side mirror. If the car behind is in both my interior mirror and my side mirror, that means they're behind me. If they're only in my side mirror, then they're next to me and I'm gonna have to slow down and go behind them. This road now merges with another one. The right lane is merging first. I'm signaling now to merge. I'm still doing the same speed as the car in front. Checking my mirrors, there's a silver car behind me. I can see them in my interior mirror and my side mirror. And also I'm doing a quick sideways glance just to make sure no one in lane 2 is moving to lane 1 as I move into lane 1 from the slip road. Generally speaking, people on the main road are helping because they need to. It would be dangerous if they didn't. A good way to judge if there is enough space to move in front of a vehicle behind is you can see the whole of the front of the vehicle in the interior mirror with a decent gap, and that they're not approaching so quickly that you would feel like you're going to make them brake. This is an example of a vehicle that is far enough back that there's likely enough space for you to move in front of them safely. Here is an example where there isn't enough space. And here is an example where there is definitely not enough space. A common mistake I see when I'm teaching how to use slip roads is my pupil will constantly be looking in their mirrors as they're going down the slip road. But their mirrors are only showing them their own slip road. You don't actually see the main road until you get near it. But also, because they're looking in their mirror so much, the car starts veering to the left or the right, or if cars start slowing down in front, they catch them dangerously. Look forwards when you're on a slip road. Look at your gap, aim for it, and when you get near your gap, then use your mirrors to make sure nobody is closing your gap. That is unlikely though. Most people are sensible enough to know that you need to merge, and they'll keep your gap open or even change lane to help you. If somebody does close your gap, then you're going to have to slow down and go behind them. One of the most important things to do on these roads is to keep a safe following distance. In the dry, it's recommended you keep at least a 2-second gap, and in the wet, at least a 4-second gap. So, it's a bit wet today, so I'm trying to keep a 4-second gap. When the car in front passes that yellow sign, it should take me around about 4 seconds for me to pass the sign. I am catching them because they're slow, so I'm slowing down as well to try and maintain this distance. As I want to go faster, I'll try and move into the right lane, which I'll call lane 2. I number lanes from left to right, so this is lane 1, the lane I'm in, and then lane 2 is the lane next to me. When that lane is free, which it is now, because there's no one behind coming up in either of my centre mirror or right mirror, I can speed up to pass. Bad timing though, because I am coming up to a 50 mile per hour speed limit. However, that is still faster than the car that I'm overtaking. Cruise control is excellent on these roads, especially when dealing with a low speed limit. Like at the moment it's 50 and there's average speed cameras. So because I naturally want to go faster than 50, I'm used to going faster than 50 on such a road, I will have to keep checking the speedo to keep my speed down. I'm going to change the subject now because cars are merging. So I'm slowing down, got this white car on my left, and I'm going to help them merge in front of me. My rule is, what's in front stays in front and what's behind stays behind when you're dealing with slip roads. That's not just my rule, that's generally what people do. Although it's not written in the highway code, I think it should be. Where was I? Oh yes, I was talking about 50 mile per hour speed limits. I feel like I want to go faster. It's just natural for me to go faster on these roads. So to stay at 50, I have to look at the speedo quite a bit, but cruise control allows me to look at the road more whilst the car keeps me at this lower limit. And I find most other people are using it as well. So if you set your speed and they've set their speed, you tend to fit in, although at the moment it's not working because I've got a lot of cars pulling in front of me and I'm not actually able to do 50. And that's because there's an exit coming up that a lot of people want to take, and that will happen if you're approaching an exit. Many people from lane 2 or 3 will be trying to make their way to lane 1. If you haven't used cruise control before, be careful the first few times you use it. The first few times you use it may be enough to put you off for life if you don't understand that it does take some practicing to get used to it. The most common mistake I see when people use cruise control for the first time is they don't turn it off when cars in front start slowing down. So they end up catching the cars in front and they have to brake harder than they wanted to, which makes them feel out of control, which they are because they're not used to the system. They lift their foot off the gas pedal, but their foot wasn't on the gas pedal. It was the cruise control keeping them along. But once you're used to it, it's just another way of interacting with the car. It is safe. And for me, it takes away some of the strain on longer journeys. It allows me to focus more on the road and less on the speedo. And it allows me to get more out of the speed limit without actually breaking it. The speed limit on motorways and dual carriageways in Great Britain is 70 miles per hour. But if you don't feel comfortable doing that speed, you can always stay in lane 1, as I am now, and do the speed of the traffic in this lane, which is usually around about 60 miles per hour due to lorries. And lorries are limited to 56 miles per hour, but that would show up as about 60 on your speedo because cars' speedos generally overread, around about 7% I find. I have had one car with an accurate speedo, that was a Vauxhall VX220. In fact, I had two of them and they both had bob-on speedos. At 70, I was doing 70, but that's the only car I've owned that does that. Generally speaking, if it says 60, I'm probably doing about 57. However, don't attempt these roads if you aren't comfortable driving at least 50 miles per hour. So I'm braking now because I can't move to lane 2 and a slow moving vehicle has moved out in front of me. Need to be ready for that. I've gone down to 30 miles per hour. Got to change down a gear now. Can't move to lane 2 because of the cars, so I just have to slow down and then gradually speed up as the lorry in front of me speeds up. What was I saying? Oh yes, there's no official minimum speed limit on these roads, but I don't allow my pupils to attempt these roads until they can maintain at least 50 miles an hour comfortably. If you can't maintain 50 miles an hour, I'd say you're not ready for these roads yet. Once you can, you'll be surprised how quickly you become desensitized to the speed and feel like you can go faster. It just takes time. You can sit in lane 1, get used to the speed, and then after a while you'll feel like you'll be able to press on and go faster. If the weather is bad though, fog, rain, only a little bit of rain can create a lot of spray on these roads. You may have to slow down, and you may have to go a bit slower at night as well if you feel your visibility isn't good enough. If you want to find out your actual speed as opposed to just your speedo speed, then you need to use GPS. Most mobile phones have it these days and sat-navs use it. The speed displayed on those systems is accurate, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't work. I've just pulled over into a lay-by to help me with this filming and now I need to set off again. Generally you don't tend to get lay-bys like this on motorways, but you do on dual carriageways, A roads. Motorways are M roads. What I recommend you do when you want to rejoin the motorway is signal to let people know what you're doing. I'm just moving out of the parking area and now I have a run up. So I'm going to sit here now until I see a gap. And when there's a gap, I'll start moving before the gap gets to me so that the gap is with me by the time I join the road. It takes some judgment, but you can vary your speed to help with that. It's quite busy today, so there may be a wait. I'll fast forward to the gap. I think I can see a gap now, so I'm getting going, speeding up into second gear, signalling. The car's going to go past and I'm going to join. So I was already at 40 miles an hour before I joined there. That's really helpful as the speed on this lane is only actually around about Well, it looks like about 50 miles anyway, 55, now about 60, but still, that 40 mile per hour run up really does help you merge safely. On dual carriageways and motorways, you should be in lane 1 unless you're overtaking. If there's more than 2 lanes, then you would use lane 2 to overtake lane 1 and lane 3 to overtake lane 2 and 1, and so on if there are even more than 3 lanes. So at the moment I'm doing 60 miles per hour. I can do 70. It's safe for me to change lane, so I can move into lane 2 and get up to 70 miles an hour to pass these slower moving vehicles. I've turned the cruise control on now, so I can easily get the most out of 70 miles an hour without going over the limit. Once I've passed these cars, I should make my way back to lane 1 unless there is another vehicle to overtake. I called them cars, they're actually a small van and 2 lorries, but once you've passed the vehicles, then move back to lane 1. That's what you should do. Although, it's not something I really agree with, because if you're doing 70 miles per hour, why is there a need to move to lane 1? All that's going to happen is I'm going to catch up with the slow moving vehicles again, have to slow down and wait for another opportunity to move to lane 2. But that is the rule, and that's what you should do. At the moment I feel like I am catching the cars on the left, although my lane has started slowing down. I am going to stay in this lane now because there really is no point me moving to lane 1, because I know I do want to go faster than this, and as soon as my lane speeds up I will. I think one day maybe the rules will change and they would state if you're doing 70 miles per hour or the speed limit, wherever the speed limit is, you can stay in your lane. Moving back to lane 1 to catch up with slower cars and have to move back again, all that does, if you're doing the speed limit, if you're doing 70 miles an hour, all that does is it helps other people speed. So why is the rule like that? Maybe they want people to speed so they get caught speeding with the speed cameras and it gives them some revenue. I'm not sure. But it's a rule I don't really understand if there's a limit. I think it's a rule that will change eventually, simply because there's so many cars, as you can see now, that we need all the lanes just to fit the cars on the road. If everyone was bunching up into one lane, it would make the traffic worse, but also I would say it makes driving less safe, because the more you're changing lane, the less safe it is. If you're maintaining your speed and staying in lane, that's probably the safer way to drive on these roads. See, I'm doing 70 miles an hour again, cruise control on, and I'm passing the slower moving vehicles. If I would have moved to lane 1 earlier, I'd probably be stuck there now for some time, as there is cars behind me. This is a good example now. I should technically move to lane 1 now because it's going to be a while for me to overtake that white car, but I'm very reluctant to, because I know if I move to lane 1 I will be stuck there. If this was a driving test, I would do that, because I've had to wait in this lane for some time before I'm able to actually pass them. Although, to be fair, on this occasion they're not going much slower than I am, so it's not a big deal. So how far ahead does the car need to be for you to have to move back to lane 1 instead of being able to stay in lane 2 and overtake them? Well, there's no set standard. It's down to the opinion of the driving examiner. So when people ask me the question, I tell them, play it safe on your test. If you're not going to catch the next car within about 15 seconds, move back to lane 1. Or if there's someone tailgating close behind, move back to lane 1 to increase safety. And I recommend doing this anyway, because when people are tailgating you, that is unsafe. You are in danger. So just let them go past. When I did my driving instructor test, the driving portion of it, I passed. Obviously I did. I'm here giving driving lessons, although I'm not right now, but you know, I'm a driving instructor. And I got 1 minor on the test. And that was because I was in lane 2 of a dual carriageway, waiting behind 2 lorries, one very slowly overtaking the other. And a car behind me moved to lane 1, undertook me on the left, and then moved in front of me between me and the lorry. And the driving examiner said I should have gone back to lane 1 instead of waiting in lane 2 for the lorry to overtake, which I totally disagree with to this day. And in fact, thinking about it now still makes me a little bit angry, even though I did that test back in 2008. Pay attention to the road markings, particularly the lane divider lines that we have here. At the moment, they're small. That usually means it's a lower hazard. When they're longer, it means there's a higher hazard. And if they're solid, you should not cross them. The cat's eyes, which are the little lights, or should I say reflectors, in between the lines, are white for lane dividers. They are red for the edge of the carriageway, and they're orange for the central reservation in the middle. They are green when you can pass. Now at the moment, I'm staying in lane 1 because what's going to happen, I know this from knowing the area. Sorry, I said I'm staying in lane 1. I'm staying in lane 2 is what I meant to say. I'm staying in lane 2 because I know the area and I know that lane 1 branches soon to go towards Chelmsford. And I'm mentioning this because I want to show you the difference in the road markings when that happens. You'll notice the line on my left, that white line, will become loads and loads of little ones close together. When you see it, you'll know what I mean. Coming up soon, I'm sure. And here we go. See how it's changed? Loads of tiny little lines very close together, and the cat's eyes, the little reflectors in between, are green. That means that road is branching. If you want to stay on this road, you need to be on this side of that line. If you want to leave, however, and go towards Chelmsford, which is where that lane takes you, then you want to be on the other side of that line in that left lane, lane 1, to take the branch. You'll see it happen soon as big lorry in front is obscuring my view a little bit, but as we get closer, you'll see it just branch away as all the cars leave. They won't actually need to signal and leave. It happens automatically. You can see it by the sign as well. The sign is telling you that lane branches. Trying to keep my distance from this lorry. It's dry now, so a 2-second gap will do it. It's quite long, and there we go. You can see the hatched markings now, which I'm not allowed to cross, red cat's eyes around it, and the lane branches away. And the 50-mile-an-hour sign is for the exit road there, it's not for me. I'm just about to go on a motorway. I've currently been on a dual carriageway. What's the difference between a motorway and a dual carriageway? Well, I'll talk about that later. Firstly, I'm going to do this small spiral roundabout to enter the M25. I'm leaving a bit late because I know I want the right lane, so I'll leave in the right lane like so there's no confusion. Cancel the signal. I'm going M25N, and it says on the road here M25 North, which is N, this lane and the other lane. I am going to use the other lane because it's shorter and it makes sense to do so. Both these lanes go where I want to go. Although this roundabout isn't very good. I do know it. It's my local motorway, if you can call it that. It's 40 minutes to an hour away, depending on the traffic. There's not many motorways exactly where I live. I have to drive a good almost an hour to get to one. But I do know this roundabout, road markings are terrible. So there's 2 lanes going round. I'm not signalling right because it's clear I'm going round it in this lane. But what I do need to do is make my way gradually to the left to leave. So M25 North, still this lane, that's good, and lane 2 there, so lane 2 and 3. But as I go past these traffic lights and this exit, I need to move down a lane. So I'm just going to signal now and make it clear that I'm doing that. Even though it says A12E here, if you're local, you know both these lanes do go ahead and leave. Signalling to leave now. You see there's 2 lanes on the exit. It wouldn't make sense if you used only 1 lane to leave here if there was 2 lanes before, because that means I would have to go from lane 3 to lane 1 in a short period of time. So that's what I mean when I say it's very, the road marking is very poor. And now I'm going to join the motorway. I'm in the shorter of the 2 slip roads. The slip road on the left, lane 1, is very easy, very long, loads of time to do that. Loads of space here and behind the lorry, just letting the slip road merge me out. I do recommend using most of the slip road when joining motorways and dual carriageways, because if you use more of it, it takes you longer to join, which means there's more time for other road users to react to you. If you try and dive out early, it doesn't give others enough time to slow down or move over and help out. Of course, moving out early is not a problem as long as it's safe, but don't be afraid to use most of the slip road. Okay, so what's the difference between a motorway and a dual carriageway? Well, many people think it's the number of lanes, but that's not true. You can have dual carriageways with 3 lanes or more, and you can have motorways with only 2 lanes on each side. A dual carriageway at the end of the day just means one carriageway going in one direction, which is this one here, no matter how many lanes, and another carriageway on the other side of the road going in the opposite direction. It's separated by a central reservation. At the moment, it's that concrete barrier in the middle. That's the central reservation, and that's what makes it a dual carriageway. A motorway is a dual carriageway. It's just got motorway status. So, is that different for someone driving a car? Difference between driving on a dual carriageway or a dual carriageway with motorway status? Not really, no. Most of the rules are still the same. It's different for different vehicles, so some vehicles have different speed limits, but for cars it's 70 miles an hour on both dual carriageways and motorway dual carriageways. Different vehicles are not allowed on motorways, so for example, cyclists, they're not supposed to use motorways, and neither should you walk along them either. Not that you'd walk on a busy dual carriageway A road, very unlikely, but you do occasionally get pavements on some of them. What other differences are there? Well, they're M roads. So this is the M25, whereas a dual carriageway would usually be an A road, and the signs are blue instead of green. But as a driver, generally speaking, the skills are exactly the same. You need the same skills to drive on both of them. I've noticed on motorways you don't get parking laybys. You do have laybys, but they're for emergencies, whereas on dual carriageways, A roads, you actually get proper laybys where you can park. At the moment there is 4 lanes. I'm staying in my lane behind this lorry doing 58 miles an hour. I wouldn't mind moving to lane 4 and going a bit faster, but there is a continuous queue of traffic. It is busy. If I get an opportunity, I will. It's worth me noting though that vehicles in this camera here, yeah, they look a lot further ahead than they are. So that red car that's just moved in front of me, that's closer than it looks on camera. So when you've been watching this video, you may be thinking I'm following at a really far distance, but it's not as big as it looks. I would say half the distance, and you're probably right. The camera seems to make things look further away. This is actually a much better illustration of the following distance I keep. I filmed this about 3.5 years ago using a different camera. The camera was better at depth perception, but it had plenty of its own problems. Those squares on the overhead gantry can display different speed limits because this motorway has variable speed limits. The speed limit can change. If there is a new number, a new speed limit with a red circle in that sign, then you must abide by it. Now moving back to lane 2 because I'm not actually overtaking that silver car for some time, although I'm going to have to go out again for that lorry that's up ahead. But if there's a speed limit without a red circle, that means it's advisory. So moving back to lane 3 now. And you see what I mean? That's kind of pointless. I'm doing 70 with my cruise control on, just moving in and out for no reason, just creating extra danger. There's no one behind me anyway. And I do want the M11, and I want to go north. So it's telling me I need lane 2 on that overhead sign. So that's what I'm going to try and do. I've got 1 mile to do it. So I think I'll get past these 2 lorries to save me squeezing in a narrow gap. And then I'll get to lane 2 and take the exit. There's a safe opportunity now. Indicator on. Checking my mirrors and the blind spot. Moving to lane 2 to go M11 north towards Cambridge. The M11 is a motorway, and a lot of that is only 2 lanes on each side, on each carriageway. Another difference between a dual carriageway and a dual carriageway with motorway status is that dual carriageways that have motorway status have decent signs and decent road markings most of the time. I find they're much easier and safer, and the slip roads are often longer. On dual carriageways that don't have motorway status, sometimes you just have a T-junction entering them, and you can see now the variable speed limit, 50 on the exit with a red circle, so that means legally I have to do no more than 50, and it's 60 if you stay on the M25. And I believe this road just winds round and becomes the M11. I don't have to do a roundabout or traffic lights or anything. and up above it says end, so the 50-mile-per-hour temporary speed limit has ended. It says there end. I don't know if you can see that on camera now, but there is an advisory speed limit of 30 on this bend, as you can see from the sign on the left. The speed limit's in a rectangle, that means it's advisory. At the moment I'm actually doing 44 because I think 30 is way too slow here. In fact, the lorry is quite close behind. Even the lorry can handle it. I can see quite far ahead. I'll slow down if I feel unsafe. I'm not leaning in my seat at all on this bend. I can see far enough that I can stop the car within the distance I can see to be clear. No hard shoulder for 350 yards. It's a warning. And yes, there's no hard shoulder here. Some motorways don't have hard shoulders anymore, which is a downgrade in safety in my opinion. They've removed the hard shoulders to increase the number of lanes, to increase traffic flow, and then they encourage everyone to go in the left lane. Yeah, I don't get it. So now I've got the slip road. I'm going to use a lot of the slip road just because it gives people loads of time. It's quite quiet. Going behind the red car. No car behind. There's a silver car in lane 2, but they're not affecting me. And just as I merge, another road is merging. I think it's the opposite direction from the M25, so I'll help them merge in front of me. On some roads you can use the hard shoulder if signs say you can, but you should not use the hard shoulder if signs say you can't unless it's an emergency. And you must not drive in any lane that has a red X displayed above it. What about changing lane? Well, I want to go to lane 3 so I can go faster. If I look in my interior mirror, I can see a van, and I can see the van in my side mirror as well. And I can have a quick sideways glance just to make sure. And there's no one there, signalling now, and I'll go. If I could only see that van in my side mirror, then it's close behind and it's unsafe for me to move in front. Or if I'm not sure, they're catching me quickly, I won't move over just in case. I'll only move over if I'm sure. Now, when to move back? I've got the cruise control at 70 now to help me get the most out of the speed limit without going over it. I'm passing this truck. I'm going to see them in my left mirror first. They're already in my left mirror, and then they'll appear in the interior mirror. When I can see all of them in the interior, the whole front of the van, then I know I've got enough space. Another quick check of the mirrors and a sideways glance to make sure no one in lane 1 is also moving to lane 2 at the same time as me, and move gently. That's a good point. When I teach people to do these roads, they tend to change lane like this. I'll show you. I'll go back to lane 1 and I'll show you how they change lane. So they look in their mirrors, they're looking too long and they start losing their position. And then when they do change, they do this. Whoa, like that. It's very quick lane change. Now you're not going to feel that on camera, but you feel that in your seat when you change lane that quickly, and it's less safe. Because if you change lane more like this, moving to lane 2 now, it's safe. Just gradually moving over. It's safer, not just because the car is more stable, but if you've made a mistake and you've missed something, or something's coming up really fast and taking you by surprise. We're human, we're going to make mistakes, we're going to miss something. If you're doing it slowly, that something that you've missed has time to react to you. If you do a sudden quick lane change, well, there's no time, and it's more likely to end badly. It's important to only overtake on the right. Overtaking on the left is known as undertaking. This is less safe as vehicles need to be able to leave the carriageway for exits or emergencies. When you pass on the left, you prevent vehicles from leaving. If you have a problem with your vehicle, get to the left as early as you can. However, in congested traffic where the lanes are moving at similar speeds, you may keep up with the traffic in your lane, even if this means passing traffic in the lane to your right. This is rule 268 of the Highway Code. For example, the black car pulls in front of me, so I slow down to regain my safe following distance and the lorry on my left passes me. But if a vehicle is slowing down and trying to leave, help them leave. They may be in trouble. Driving on the roads today has been pretty good. I was hoping to give a good example of tailgating, but so far today, only one person has tailgated me and I wasn't filming, although that would have been a good one to film because she was so close, I could see bits of food between her teeth from her lunch. But if someone is tailgating you, to make things safe, just keep a bigger distance between you and the car in front so that you're less likely going to need to brake hard. And if there is an opportunity to move over to the left to let them pass, say you're in lane 2, move back to lane 1, then do so. Because whilst they're tailgating you, it's less safe. You want to look out for yourself and protect yourself. If you drive a hatchback or an estate car, this is quite important. Make sure you got screen wash, because on these roads that rear window gets dirty quickly. Not needed with a saloon car, because the way the air flows over the car, it stops it getting dirty. But if your car has a flat back, it's going to get filthy. At Birch Hanger Green roundabout now is one of my favourites in inverted commas, because it doesn't make much sense. As you go around it, if you're coming from over there, you start in the left and then you have to move to the right and then you go back to the left again. And generally with spiral roundabouts, you start in the right and you make your way left. I need to go towards the A120 towards Braintree, but it's not on that sign yet. So I'm going to go with all other routes and Stansted, which is lane 4 on that big sign in front of me. Their lights have gone red, so mine are about to go green. Here we go. I'm saying lane 4. It looks like there's only 3 lanes here. Might be 4. Oh, there is. Just hard to see them. Oh, and a red light again. There we go. A120 East, which is where I want to go. See the next sign over there saying I need lane 3 and 4 to go to Stansted. Another red light. Don't need to change lane yet, but I'm sure we'll do soon. Can't be in the right lane to leave. It does take a while to get around this roundabout. If you miss your exit, you're going to be a while. Oh, I can actually see over there's a sign that's saying lane 1 and 2 to go towards A120 Stansted and Colchester, which is the same as Braintree. So I need lane 1 and 2, but I'm in lane 4. So I'm going to indicate and try and get in front of this car who's changing lane themselves. I can see them there, that's good. And now as it's free, I may as well just go to the left lane and leave in the left lane. A120 East, Airport, and there's a sign in front of me. It's not so bad from that direction actually, but if you're coming from Colchester, going towards Cambridge, it's not easy unless you know it. But then most things are easy when you know it. Oh, and when I said Stansted and Colchester are the same as Braintree, I don't actually mean they're the same as Braintree. They're just in the same direction, which is why I knew that was the exit I needed. That's where having a good idea where major towns and cities are in the area that you're driving or the country that you're driving can make driving on these roads easier, because often signs are directed to these places. So if you know roughly where they are and roughly where you're going, that helps you make decisions. If you know Birmingham is to the south of you and you know you're travelling north and the sign says Birmingham, then you know you probably shouldn't take that. But these days, you don't need to know it so much. The first 6 years of my driving, 6 years I didn't have a sat-nav. I used to rely on road signs and maps. But these days I tend to plug in a postcode to Google sat-nav and look at the overview, see if I think it's all right, and then trust it. I'm not so sure if it's a good idea, but it's been working for me quite well for a while, and it is a good system. I do enjoy it. Also, gets me around the traffic. That's what I really like about it. Another tip, if you need to slow down a lot, I recommend using your hazard lights, because if someone's been doing a long journey, they've seen brake lights a lot on that journey, and most of the time the car in front's just slowing down a little bit. And if you're the car in front now and you need to slow down a lot, it's a good way to differentiate between slowing down a bit and slowing down to a near stop. Pop your hazard lights on, that wakes up the driver behind and helps keep you safe. It's also recommended that you don't drive for too long because fatigue does set in. It's recommended that you drive for 2 hours and then have a break. Also, don't risk driving when you're tired. If you're feeling tired, pull over somewhere safe and have a sleep or have a coffee and try and feel refreshed. If you're feeling sleepy behind the wheel, don't risk it. If you fall asleep when you're driving, well, I don't have to say much more than that, do I? If you found the video interesting or helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, then Collingwood are there for you, because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy of the car you're using for your practice. Via the link, there's up to 35% off and a £20 Amazon gift card at the moment. If you want to insure your own car, I recommend checking out the link to Confused.com. You fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back from many insurers to compare who's cheapest. And if you're shopping around for different cars, you can change your car on that quote as many times as you like without having to do the whole quote again to compare how much it costs to insure different cars, which is a really useful tool. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel, so thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.